extremes, and finding the balance between them, love or hate of humanity in all its diversity, self-love and self-hate. These are all pressures and qualities that this cycle of the human design weather for June 19th to 24th, 2025 will bring. Well, hello there. I'm Margot Fraser, your guide through the cosmic weather. As a certified human design professional and intuitive coach, I'm on a mission to help you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. We are looking at the conditioning pressures coming from the planetary motions, the transit field. You can't avoid these. You'll likely notice their effects playing out around you, but rather than you reacting and being pulled off track, this awareness will empower you to navigate the cycles, staying true to your authentic nature and potentially taking advantage of opportunities when correct for you. All right, let's delve into the weather for this cycle. This cycle starts on June 19th at 12:43 a.m., going until June 24th at 10:09 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, that's coming in June 19th at 6:43 a.m., going until June 25th at 4:09 a.m. So remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the sun earth activations because that's 70% of the conditioning field. Well, we have the solstice on the 20th as part of this cycle. So happy solstice. Anytime there's a solstice or an equinox, we have two of the gates of love, part of what we call the vessel of love in the G center being activated. The G center is associated with our love, identity, and direction in life. It's that diamond at the center of the chart. The sun has moved into gate 15, the trait of extremes. This is also the trait of love of humanity or not. The polarity can always be there. Its keynote says the quality of behavior, which expresses the proper balance between extremes. It's part of the collective circuitry that's all about impersonal sharing, and it's on the logic side of the collective circuitry, which is about seeing and finding the patterns that will carry us into the future. It's about experimenting and understanding. This is really a universal gate. All living things have this gate in their design, right down to the design of a cell. It's geared towards collective behavior versus the individual behavior that we see in gate 10, which we're going to look at next. That's the Earth's position. Here in the 15th gate, this is where we get differentiation because we have all these different possibilities of rhythms that can be created, all of the extremes of behavior in that sense. So it's a real spectrum that comes here. Collectively, it means that we may see extremism playing out in a greater way. And it's going to be emphasized because Jupiter is also sitting in that gate 15, and Jupiter brings expansion of extremes. Ultimately, it's about finding the balance for humanity within those extremes. So it really calls on humanity to determine where we want to be on that spectrum as we see all the various patterns that are playing out at a personal level. So for you, it could pull you towards extremes of your own behavior. Perhaps getting up early one day and late another day, eating a lot on one day and not much the next day. There's just so many different ways that this can play out. As you observe yourself, this can help you to find that balance of what really resonates to you. Find that balance between the extremes. Of course, you need to follow your strategy and authority to find your own flow. It can support bringing an adaptability to rhythms around you and dealing with diversity. Of course, we may see extremes playing out in others that we judge as negative and that we might not be able to accept, and that can create some friction. You might even judge your own behavior as being extreme in a negative way. But if it truly came from following your strategy and authority, it's correct, so be it. This trait is really rooted in the ability to confront any challenge without expectations. This ability to confront any challenge, to be able to accept any place within the spectrum of extremes is very important. However, we might also see the alienation of others through extremes. This is going to be potentially an uncomfortable cycle. If you have gate 5, the trait of fixed rhythms, fixed habits in the sacral center, if you've got that in your own design on its own, it's not in a channel, you're going to have to watch that you don't get pulled out of your own beneficial habits, right? And swing into the extremes. This is one that can be a little bit difficult here. The Earth has moved into gate 10, the trait of behavior of the self. This is also the gate of self-love, or its polarity, self-hate. Its keynote says the underlying code of behavior, which ensures successful interaction despite circumstances. This is part of a special channel that we call integration, that's all about individual survival. So, ensuring successful interaction despite circumstances, this is being able to survive no matter what's going on around you. It's the gate that provides the identity to what's called the integration process, to being oneself, living as oneself, and surviving as an individual. It's the gate of being in the world as yourself. And it does condition the behavior of the world. So, how do you live your life as an expression? It's a place where the other love gates have an expression in the world through your behavior. So, gate 25, universal love and innocence. How do you express innocence in life? How do you express your rhythm through that gate 15 we just talked about? How do you express the existential quality necessary for just being in the experience of life? That comes through gate 46, the gate of love of the vessel, love of the body vessel. So it's out of this gate that, as an individual, we pour those things out into the world. That's the vessel of love, pouring it out. It is rooted in accepting your place in the world. There's that quote from John Kabat-Zinn, wherever you go, there you are. It brings the possibility to love yourself, to love being in the world, to love life. And the more you're being yourself, living as yourself, your unique design, the stronger your capacity is for surviving, regardless of circumstances. So, speaking back to that keynote again, the polarity can be expressed here. Self-hate, your love or your hate of yourself, is going to be expressed through your behavior. And others can see that, right? When you look at someone through their behavior, you can get a sense of whether they love themselves or not. When we look at these two traits together and string their keynotes together, there's a few ways that it could present itself. So, your love of yourself or not, and how you behave as a result of that, can have you move through extremes with others that can help to teach you to love yourself in even a greater way, or to hate yourself in a greater way. Your love and hate for yourself could have you join and share with groups that resonate to you. That individual nature meeting the collective nature of gate 15 that could move you into more extreme patterns that, let's say, amplify that love or hate or place along the continuum of the extremes. When we look out at the collective, we may see more extreme expressions and patterns playing out that bring out more love or more hate within humanity. And that may test your own ability to stay in that place of self love and living as your unique self, not getting caught up in the mob mentality per se. If there are extreme things happening in the world around you, there could be a sense that your individual survival is being threatened. Another way this could play out is when you love yourself, you'll go through the extremes that you're meant to. If you don't love yourself, well, you might go through extremes that are more difficult to navigate. All right, let's move into our channels now. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their chart is receiving activation of the related traits and qualities. So it does have a big impact in that way. This cycle, we have just 3 channels that are being created by the transit of the moon. This means they're just little tasters because the moon only activates a trait for about 10 to 11 hours, give or take. The first one's coming in on June 19th at 6:59 p.m., going until June 20th at 4:28 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's coming in June 19th at 12:59 a.m., going until June 20th at 10:20 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 51, the trait of shock in the ego center, also called the heart center. It's a motor that generates willpower. That's connecting with gate 25, the trait of spirit of the self, innocence, and universal love being activated by both Neptune and Saturn. That one's in the G center. Together, they create the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first. This is an individual channel that can bring a pulse of knowing of what leap into the unknown to take to stretch yourself, initiating you into a new sense of self and coming more deeply into yourself and being centered in that. That can be very empowering and support you in accepting yourself as you are. That's the opportunity that it brings. There's an opportunity it brings to be able to adapt to shock. The caution here, though, and what we most often see playing out in the not self world is being competitive with others out of the ego instead of stretching oneself. Next up, on June 22nd at 9:10 p.m., going until June 23rd at 6:17 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC coming in June 23rd at 3:10 a.m., going until 12:17 p.m. We have the moon moving into gate 20 in the throat center. This is the trait of the now, of contemplation. Be here now. It's connecting with the Earth's position, that gate 10, the trait of behavior of the self and self love. Together, they create the channel of awakening, a design of commitment to higher principles, part of the individual circuitry that's all about mutation, knowing, and in this case, self empowerment, expressing the self love and the acceptance of yourself, of that gate 10 out into the world, or that self hate and non acceptance out in the now. This is the identity of the G center connected to the throat. So, with this channel, if you're criticized while it's active, or those of you that actually have this in your chart, it's part of your natal design, it can feel like who you are is being criticized when you receive criticism. So there can be a real sensitivity to criticism when speaking your truth from your self, your identity being criticized. There can also be a pressure to want to be recognized, which could bring a kind of attention-seeking behavior. This channel operates best when you're invited to speak, and of course, following your strategy and authority. Next one up, June 24th at 9:41 a.m., going until 6:52 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. UTC, that's coming in June 24th at 3:41 p.m., going until the 25th at 12:52 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 12, the trait of caution. We saw this as the sun's position in our last cycle, connecting with the north node of the moon, gate 22, the trait of grace. Together, these create the channel of openness, a design of a social being. That expression that is in the throat, gate 12, is empowered by the emotional motor and the possible awareness of gate 22. Expressing that grace of gate 22 or expressing the disgrace. So it's going to bring emotionality. It's an emotional wave that operates in a spike, so it can be triggered high or low. Otherwise, it's actually quite even. And it's a channel that brings the pressure to be socially open or socially closed, depending on the mood that you're in. All right, let's move on to our long-term transits. So the long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They are with us for a longer period of time, years in some cases. So your not self mind could start to think that they're part of you, even when it's not something that's in your own design. And that can be confusing when that transit finally leaves that particular trait. We have the nodes of the moon sitting in gates 22 and 47. We saw them shift into those gates in our last cycle. Gate 22, the gate of grace or disgrace in the solar plexus emotional center, and gate 47, the trait of oppression and realization in the ajna center, the seat of our mind, our mental awareness. These are sitting in line 6. So for gate 22, the trait of grace and openness, line 6 is called maturity. It has a developmental theme that says the alignment with experience of form with substance. The exaltation says the possibility that experience and social interaction will result in leadership capacity. The detriment says the possibility that experience in social interaction will result in nonconformist expression of openness, being more of a rebel in social interaction. Gate 47, the trait of realization and oppression in the ajna, that line 6 is called futility. And it's quite a difficult position. There's no exaltation for this particular line. We only have the detriment, which is really about this sense of futility in that there are some things in the world that we just can't make sense of. This is part of our collective abstract circuitry that's about going through cycles of experience, reflecting on them to make sense, gain the wisdom, and share it. But there are some things that just you can't make sense of. So don't be surprised if you see this sense of futility and hopelessness playing out in the world around you. Now, fortunately, this is going to move out on the 24th, so we don't have it for a really long period of time. But still, you might just sense that that's around you. Jupiter, as I mentioned already, with its quality of expansion, sitting in that gate 15, same as the sun's position, the trait of extremes, also the love and hate of humanity in the G center. So going to be extra strong this cycle with the sun also being there. It's also in line 6 called self-defense. It has a developmental theme that says modesty that is never confused with weakness. This is a recognition that others can see being extreme as a negative. And so there can be this pulling back and hiding of one's extreme nature until you can see that, yeah, that extreme pattern can really contribute to humanity. Line 6 typically don't step into anything unless they can see it's really going to make a difference. So that kind of pulling back and waiting, that's the self-defense. The constant re-examination to weed out the weakest aspect. That's what its exaltation says. The power of the self and exploring the extremes to find the weakest point. So finding the weakness in the patterns. That line 6 can be very keen, very astute at that through testing them and sharing those. Now, the detriment is the tendency to use harmony as a weapon in problem situations rather than focusing on the root causes, the power of the self to ignore the weakest point in favor of harmony. So here it's recognizing the weakness in another's patterns, but generally being too apathetic to share the criticism. I'd rather just keep the harmony. I'm not just going to point anything out. 815 is part of the logic circuitry, which always has this innate critical nature built into it because it's always trying to find the best pattern to carry us into the future. Saturn and Neptune both sitting in that gate 25, the trait of spirit of the self, of the innocence and universal love, or the polarity. Neptune is sitting in line 5 called recuperation. This one has a developmental theme that says when innocence is sapped of its vitality, healing is the first priority. So it's going to bring that pressure to, sapped of your vitality, feeling low, healing. Healing is going to be your priority. When you stay in innocence in the now, seeing the world through the eyes of wonder and being comfortable in the unknown, other people want that. And that pulling on that energy can sap your vitality. Now, this trait brings the power of the spirit to heal and be healed. And it's through withdrawing to recuperate. Perhaps Neptune, with its watery nature, will help us to dissolve what's in the way of healing your spirit. Or it could veil it, has this veiling, unveiling quality. The detriment is hypochondria and the need to be healed by others. This is ultimately about being yourself. And when you're not, it can bring illness. There's a lot of people that don't rest and do that recuperation until they get sick. So sometimes we're forced into it. Really looking after yourself, being yourself, particularly while this line is present, it's going to be important. It's going to support your immune system. Saturn sitting in line 4. Now, this is a line, it's called survival, that is only in exaltation. It says the nature of true innocence can be maintained regardless of circumstances. The spiritual warrior. Now, Saturn brings constraints and consequences and limitations. So it might limit the circumstances under which you can maintain your innocence and being yourself. Perhaps it'll bring a greater discipline to that. Could be a tricky pair with Saturn in line 4 and Neptune in the 5, where if you're not being disciplined and looking after your immune system, Saturn's going to bring the consequences of illness. Uranus, with its unusualness, is in gate 8, the trait of individual contribution in the throat center. Here's another one in line 6 called communion. It's got a developmental theme that says the certainty which grows out of harmony. Its exaltation says the gift of knowing when to contribute creatively. Its detriment says uncertainty in timing and regret despite circumstances. Line 6s, once again, generally are not going to contribute unless they can really see it's going to make a difference. And even though it's individual in this line, there's a real attunement to the collective. And that needs to be there to understand the patterns and the timing of things. You can be present to that and know when to contribute creatively in the exaltation here, or if you don't pay attention to the collective, you're not going to have that correct timing. Pluto sitting in gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the abstract experiential circuitry. It's the gate of daydreaming, of fantasizing about the next experience you want to have. It's the pressure to start a new experience. Just a reminder with line 2, in the end, it has to be practical or of value in some way. Remember that for any of these traits, if you don't have them in your own design, it's just pressure from the transit field. You can observe it playing out around you. You can learn from it. But whether there's actually something for you to do with it is according to your own strategy and authority. So watch that it's not running you. All right, that brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you want to understand the basics of the body graph at a high level, what's the red and the black about, the different geometric shapes, a bit of background on the system, you can grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would be very grateful if you could give this episode a like and consider subscribing. All right, well, expect extremes for better or worse for yourself and playing out around you in this particular cycle. That sun bringing that in strongly, expanded by Jupiter. Can you find the beauty in your own extremes and in those of others? It's also a time for fostering self-love and bringing awareness to those places where you may not be loving yourself so much. There's also an emphasis on the G center traits, love, identity, direction in life in this particular cycle. With the Sun Earth positions being in the G center, we've got Saturn and Neptune activating that gate 25 in the G center. So 3 out of 4 of the love gates, universal love, love of humanity, self-love, or not. So it is going to bring more of a pressure to come into yourself. Come into yourself. Be in that place of self-love. We also have an emphasis on line 6 qualities in this particular cycle, with both of the nodes sitting in line 6, Jupiter sitting in line 6, Uranus sitting in line 6. Line 6 always being transitional, being a little bit sometimes aloof, not going to engage unless it can see it's really going to make a difference. So there could be this sense of this holding back. However, if that difference really can be seen, then wow, it could be something that's very transcendent and transitional that comes out of it. Okay, well, have a great cycle. Be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.